Pablo Escobar stands by a second-floor window on Los Olivos Street. His fingers nervously grip a Motorola radio telephone. Outside the window, an ordinary middle-class residential neighborhood. Nothing special. That's exactly why he's here. The man who once owned luxurious estates, private zoos, and an army of 5,000 men now hides in a house of 80 square meters. December 2nd, 1993. 3 in the afternoon. Just over an hour remains until his death, but he doesn't know it yet. 44 years old, weight over 100 kilograms, thick black hair with gray streaks, a mustache that became his trademark. He hasn't shaved in a week. He wears a worn t-shirt and jeans. Over the past 16 months of running, he's changed safe houses 147 times. In the next room, his bodyguard and radio operator, Limon. Just one man. There used to be hundreds. Pablo dials his son Juan Pablo's number. The conversation lasts 3 minutes and 17 seconds. Long enough for American tracking equipment to pinpoint the signal. Long enough to launch the operation that will turn the richest criminal in history into a corpse on a red tile roof within an hour. But 24 hours before this moment, he still believed he could turn the situation around. That his connections, money, and ruthlessness would work again. That he was invincible. When the next day all of Medellín comes out to celebrate his death, few will remember that 15 years earlier, this same city carried him on their shoulders. That he built hospitals and soccer fields here. That the poor called him Robin Hood. That he controlled 80% of the world's cocaine market and earned $21 billion a year, more than the GDP of half the countries in Latin America. The story of Pablo Escobar isn't just the story of a drug lord, it's an anatomy of power in its absolute form. The story of a man who challenged an entire state and lost. But before losing, he changed the rules of the game forever. To understand how he ended up on that roof, we need to go back 35 years, to a small town in the Colombian mountains, where a skinny boy with cunning eyes was just learning to survive. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born on December 1, 1949, in the village of Rionegro, 2 hours from Medellín. Father, Abel de Jesus Escobar, a farmer and watchman on a cattle ranch. Mother, Hermilda Gaviria, a schoolteacher. 7 children. Pablo was the third. Poverty. Not destitution, but constant scarcity. When you watch your mother mend clothes by kerosene lamplight because there's no money for electricity. When your father comes home drunk because sober he can't bear his own powerlessness. When your older brother drops out of school at 14 to work. Hermilda said Pablo was different from childhood. Not worse, not better, different. At 7 years old, he told her, "Mom, I'm going to be rich. You'll have everything you want." She smiled. All children say that. But Pablo didn't just dream. He observed. He studied. By 9 years old, he already understood the main rule of Colombian society. The law only works for the rich. When his father was unfairly fired from the farm and the family was left without money, the local landowner simply shrugged. Nobody stood up for them. The police? They worked for the rich. The courts? They didn't exist for the poor. 12 years old. Pablo walks past an elementary school in Medellín with friends, where the family had recently moved. In the courtyard stand expensive bicycles, children of wealthy parents. One particularly beautiful, red, with a chrome handlebar. "Just look," whispers his friend. "Why just look?" Pablo replies. He waits until the guard turns away. 30 seconds. Climbs over the low fence. Takes the bicycle. Rides away. His heart pounds, but not from fear, from excitement. Nobody shouts. Nobody chases. That evening, he sells the bicycle for 20 pesos, almost his father's weekly earnings. He gives the money to his mother, says he found part-time work. Hermilda believes him, or pretends to believe. This discovery changes everything. You can take what doesn't belong to you and nothing happens. If you're fast enough, bold enough, smart enough. 15 years old, Pablo no longer just steals bicycles. He steals car radios, robs parking lots, forges school certificates for sale. He earns a reputation and enemies. A high school student named Carlos tries to take money from him for stolen radios. Carlos is 3 years older, a head taller, stronger. He pushes Pablo in the chest in the schoolyard in front of a dozen witnesses. "Half is mine, shorty. This is my territory." Pablo is silent, looks him in the eyes, doesn't look away, then quietly says, "Okay, come tomorrow for the money, to the old warehouse on the outskirts." The next day, Carlos comes, with 2 friends for backup. The warehouse is dark, smells of mold and machine oil. Pablo waits, but not alone, with 4 older guys he hired for 20 pesos. They beat Carlos, methodically, without emotion, break his nose, knock out 2 teeth, leave him lying in a pool of blood and urine. Pablo leans over him. "This was my territory, now still mine, and yours too." He takes no pleasure in violence. This isn't sadism, it's a lesson, a message. From that day, none of the local thieves try to threaten him. A reputation for ruthlessness is worth more than any money. What shaped Pablo Escobar? Not poverty itself. Millions of Colombians lived in misery. Not lack of opportunities. Many escaped the slums legally. 2 factors. First, deep humiliation from his father's powerlessness. Abel de Jesus was an honest man, and honesty made him a victim. Pablo watched his father bow his head before landowners, police, officials. How he begged, humiliated himself, endured, and still remained poor. Honesty didn't work. It made you weak. Second, an acute sense of injustice in the social system. The rich weren't rich because they worked harder. They were born into the right families, had the right connections, bought the right people. The law protected them, not justice. If the system is fundamentally unjust, why follow its rules? This logic, the logic of a sociopath or revolutionary, depending on your perspective, became the foundation of Pablo's personality. He didn't consider himself a criminal. He considered himself someone who simply played by the real rules, not those written on paper. 18 years old, Pablo drops out of school permanently. Formally, he's enrolled at the University of Antioquia, but it's a fiction. He uses the student ID as cover for his real activities. He meets Alberto Prieto, 52 years old, gray hair, expensive suit, gold watch. A professional smuggler who's been working since the 1940s. Cigarettes, whiskey, electronics, anything that can cross borders and turn a profit. Prieto has connections at the port of Barranquilla, corrupt customs officials, transport networks. They meet in a bar in downtown Medellín. Pablo comes with a proposal. He can provide muscle and street-level distribution that Prieto lacks. Young guys willing to take risks for small money. Prieto studies the confident teenager across the table. "You're too young for this business, kid." "Age doesn't matter," Pablo replies. "What matters is whether you can deliver." "I can deliver." Prieto smiles. He likes audacity. They shake hands. For the next 2 years, Pablo works for Prieto, learns logistics, how to bribe officials, how to hide contraband, how to organize transport routes, how to keep records so the tax authorities find nothing, how to build a network of people where everyone knows only their piece of the puzzle. But most importantly, he learns that the real money isn't in street crime. It's in infrastructure, in connections, in the ability to move large quantities of goods across borders. This is the business model that will later make him a billionaire. In 1970, Prieto is arrested. 20-year sentence. The organization falls apart. Most go their separate ways. Pablo doesn't. He sees opportunity. He has knowledge. He has connections. He has ambition. All he needs is the right product. And that's when cocaine enters his life. Early 1970s. Cocaine isn't yet a global epidemic. It's an elite drug for rock stars and millionaires. But Pablo reads, studies markets, talks to people. He sees a trend. Demand is growing in the United States, exponentially. The hippie movement is fading. Disco culture is rising. Cocaine is the drug of success, energy, confidence. Everything Americans worship. Supply is limited. Most cocaine comes from Bolivia and Peru through small smugglers flying light aircraft. Chaotic, risky, inefficient. There's no industrial scale, no proper organization. Pablo understands. Whoever controls supply can dictate prices. Whoever builds an efficient delivery system will become a monopolist. This isn't crime, it's entrepreneurship. Illegal entrepreneurship, but the principles are the same. He makes his first trip to Peru in 1971. 22 years old, no money, no connections. Just determination and a business plan in his head. In the Huallaga Valley, he meets coca farmers. Poor people like his parents once were. They grow coca leaves, sell them for pennies to intermediaries who produce cocaine paste. Pablo proposes a deal. He'll buy directly from them at double the price intermediaries pay, but in large volumes. The farmers are suspicious, but money talks. He returns to Colombia with 15 kilograms of cocaine paste. Now he needs chemists to process it into powder, and he needs transport to get it to the United States. Both problems are solvable with money and connections. His cousin Gustavo Gaviria becomes his right hand. Gustavo is careful where Pablo is reckless, analytical where Pablo is impulsive. They complement each other perfectly. Together, they recruit their first team. 2 chemists, 4 pilots, 6 street dealers. The first shipment to Miami goes in March 1972. 35 kilograms, hidden in a private aircraft with a false bottom. The pilot is a former Air Force officer who lost his job for alcoholism. Pablo pays him $5,000, more than his annual salary. The plane lands successfully. Distributors in Miami sell everything in 2 weeks. Net profit, $70,000. For Pablo, a fortune. For what will become the Medellín Cartel, pocket change. But it proves the concept. The system works. Now it just needs to scale. 1973. Pablo is already running 5 flights a month. Small planes, light loads, multiple routes to minimize risk. Revenue reaches $500,000 a year. He buys his first house, nothing luxurious, but his own. Gives his mother $10,000. She cries, asks where the money comes from. He says, import-export business, Mom, don't worry. But scaling brings problems. Competitors notice the new player. The Ochoa brothers, Jorge, Juan David, and Fabio, control most of Medellín's cocaine trade. Old families, deep roots, political connections. One evening, Pablo receives a message. Come to a meeting at Hacienda Nápoles, the Ochoa family estate. Come alone. He goes. Not alone. Gustavo follows in a second car, armed, ready to intervene. But Pablo enters the hacienda alone. Spacious room, leather furniture, expensive paintings. 3 brothers behind a massive oak table, all in suits, all studying him with cold eyes. Jorge Ochoa, the eldest, speaks first. You're making a lot of noise for someone so young. People are talking about you. Not all the talk is good. I'm just doing business, Pablo replies calmly. Our business, Juan David adds, without asking. Silence. Pablo feels how the next minute will determine his future. He can apologize, ask for forgiveness, accept a junior role. Or he can play bold. He chooses bold. Your business is one thing, mine is another. You work with traditional suppliers, traditional routes. I built my own. There's room for everyone. The American market is growing. Fighting over crumbs when we can share the whole pie, that's stupidity. Fabio laughs. Jorge doesn't. You're either very brave or very stupid, Jorge says. What makes you think we won't just kill you and take your routes? Because I know things you need, Pablo answers. New suppliers in Peru. Corrupt officials at the airport you don't have. Distributors in Miami outside your control. Kill me, you get nothing. Partner with me, you get access to everything. Another silence. The brothers exchange glances, some wordless communication between them. Finally, Jorge nods. "All right, we'll work together, but on our terms. You get 15% of profits on joint operations. When you prove yourself, we'll talk about more." Pablo agrees. He has no choice. But he doesn't plan to stay a junior partner for long. This meeting marks the birth of what will become the Medellín Cartel. Not yet under that name, not yet with that power, but the foundation is laid. 1975. The partnership with the Ochoas changes everything. Pablo gains access to their infrastructure, their connections, their protection. In return, they get his efficiency, his aggression, his willingness to take risks they avoid. Cocaine shipments grow from kilograms to hundreds of kilograms monthly, then to tons. New routes open, through Panama, through the Bahamas, through Mexico. Pablo innovates constantly. Submarines, tunnels, cocaine hidden in shipments of flowers, coffee, timber, swallowed in condoms by human mules. Every method that can work, works. But more important than transport are two other innovations. First, vertical integration. Pablo doesn't just buy from Peruvian farmers. He starts growing his own coca in remote Colombian regions. Doesn't just process, builds his own labs in the jungle. Doesn't just distribute, creates his own retail network in American cities. Control the entire chain, control profits. Second, systematic violence as a business tool. Not chaotic brutality, but calculated terror. When a pilot steals 20 kilograms and tries to disappear, Pablo finds him, kills him, and displays the body in a public place with a sign. This is what happens to thieves. When a police officer raids one of his labs, Pablo doesn't just bribe his superiors, he kills the officer, then kills his partner, then threatens the officer's family. The message is clear. It's cheaper and safer to take a bribe than to do your job. The Colombian state in the mid-70s is weak, corrupt, overwhelmed by political violence between leftist guerrillas and right-wing paramilitaries. The police and army are too busy fighting insurgents to focus on drug traffickers. This power vacuum is Pablo's greatest advantage. By 1977, his personal income exceeds $3 million a year. He's 28 years old. In Medellín, he's already a legend. But he wants more than money. He wants respect, legitimacy. He wants to be seen not as a criminal, but as a benefactor, a man of the people. So he starts building. The neighborhood of Barrio Pablo Escobar. He doesn't just give it his name, he builds it from scratch. 400 houses for the poorest families in Medellín. Free, no strings attached. Each house, 2 bedrooms, kitchen, bathroom, electricity, running water. Things poor Colombians dream of but never have. Soccer fields, community centers, a church. He personally attends the opening of every facility, shakes hands, hugs children, listens to old women thank him with tears in their eyes. For them, he's not a drug dealer, he's a savior. "The government did nothing for us," one resident says in an interview. "Pablo gave us homes. Pablo gave us dignity." This isn't philanthropy. This is strategy. Every house he builds is a soldier he recruits. Every family he helps is a family that will hide him, lie to police for him, die for him if needed. He's building an army of loyalty that money alone can't buy. He also starts building his personal empire. Hacienda Nápoles, a 70-square-kilometer estate, lakes, pools, private airstrip, zoo with elephants, giraffes, hippos smuggled from Africa, a museum of vintage cars, sculptures, fountains, the entrance gate decorated with the small plane from his first drug shipment, a monument to his success. It costs millions, but money is no longer a problem. Pablo later tells a journalist, "We spent $2,500 a month just on rubber bands to wrap cash. More money came in than we could count." The problem isn't earning money, the problem is laundering it. Pablo invests in legitimate businesses, taxi companies, real estate, car dealerships, nightclubs, restaurants. Creates a network of shell companies, buys politicians, judges, police chiefs. Not just bribes, systematic corruption at all levels of government. In 1978, Forbes magazine estimates his wealth at $3 billion. He's 30 years old. But wealth brings new problems. The bigger the empire, the more enemies want to destroy it. 1979. The first serious challenge comes not from police, but from competitors. The Cali cartel, led by Gilberto and Miguel Rodriguez Orejuela, controls the southern route through Mexico. They're more sophisticated, more business-minded, less violent. They see Pablo as a barbarian tarnishing the industry's reputation. The conflict starts small. Territorial disputes, stolen shipments, murdered couriers. But it escalates quickly. Pablo's response is characteristically brutal. He identifies 3 key Cali distributors in Medellín, orders them killed, not quickly, but slowly, tortured for hours before death. Bodies left where Cali people will find them. Gilberto Rodriguez sends a message: "We can avoid war. There's enough market for everyone." Pablo's response: "There's enough market for those who deserve it. You don't." The war drags on for 2 years. Dozens dead on both sides. Shipments intercepted. Labs destroyed. But neither side can gain decisive advantage. Finally, in 1981, the other cartels force mediation. A meeting in Panama. All major players: Medellín, Cali, the North Coast Cartel, Independence. Pablo arrives with 20 bodyguards. Gilberto with 15. The agreement: territorial division. Medellín controls the northern route through the Caribbean. Cali, the southern through Mexico. Prices fixed to prevent undercutting. Disputes resolved through arbitration, not violence. Pablo signs. Not because he wants peace, but because he needs time to consolidate power. The truce won't last, he knows it. But for now, it serves his interests. This meeting cements his status. Pablo Escobar is now one of the most powerful criminals in the world. No longer a rising player, but an established emperor. And emperors have different problems than street dealers. 1982. Pablo decides he wants political power to match his economic power. He joins the Liberal Alternative Movement, a left-wing faction of Colombia's Liberal Party. Runs for Congress as an alternate representative for Antioquia. His campaign platform: housing for the poor, public works, soccer fields, social programs. Everything he's already doing privately. His slogan: Pablo Escobar, man of the people. The poor of Medellín love him. At rallies, thousands cheer. He promises what no politician delivers: actual help, not empty words. His criminal background? Most don't know. Those who know don't care. When you're hungry and someone feeds you, you don't ask where the food came from. He wins easily. Becomes Congressman Escobar. Now he has congressional immunity, can't be arrested without special permission, can travel freely, gains access to government facilities, classified information, direct contact with ministers and the president. For a brief moment, it seems possible. Maybe he can transition from criminal to legitimate businessman to respected politician. The Colombian version of the American dream, just with a more violent beginning. But there's a problem. His name is Rodrigo Lara Bonilla. Lara Bonilla is the new Minister of Justice. Young, idealistic, incorruptible. He's made fighting drug trafficking his mission, and he sees through Pablo's facade. At a congressional session, Lara Bonilla stands up and publicly denounces Pablo. This man sitting in Congress is not a representative of the people. He's a representative of the drug cartels. His wealth comes from poison that kills thousands of Americans. He uses social programs to launder drug money and buy loyalty. He's a criminal, and he has no place in this chamber. He presents documents, police reports, DEA files, witness statements. Not enough for conviction, but enough to destroy Pablo's political career. The chamber erupts. Some demand Pablo's expulsion, others defend him. Media coverage is massive. Within days, everyone in Colombia knows the truth. Pablo is forced to resign. His political dreams collapse. But worse, the government, under American pressure, starts taking action. Lab raids intensify. Extradition becomes a real threat. The U.S. wants him in prison. Pablo faces a choice: retreat and hope authorities lose interest, or fight back. He chooses fight. And when Pablo Escobar fights, people die. April 30th, 1984, 10:30 at night. Rodrigo Lara Bonilla drives home in his armored Mercedes. 2 bodyguards in the car, chase vehicle behind. At a traffic light, a motorcycle pulls alongside. The passenger raises a MAC-10 submachine gun, fires through the window. 23 bullets. Lara Bonilla dies instantly. The motorcycle speeds away. The assassin is a 19-year-old sicario, hired killer, from Medellin's slums. Pablo pays him $5,000. The kid considers it a fortune. When police catch him 2 days later, he has no regrets. Don Pablo gave me more than the government ever did. Lara Bonilla's assassination changes everything. It's not just another murder. It's the assassination of a government minister, a declaration of war against the Colombian state. President Belisario Betancourt, who previously turned a blind eye to drug trafficking, has no choice but to respond. He reinstates the extradition treaty with the United States, suspended for years. Launches a massive crackdown, military raids on labs, arrests of traffickers, asset seizures. Pablo and other cartel leaders flee. They hide in the jungle, in remote estates, constantly moving. Colombian special forces, trained and equipped by Americans, hunt them. This is the beginning of the real war. Not the small skirmishes of the 70s, but total war between the cartels and the state. A war that will kill thousands and nearly destroy Colombia. But Pablo isn't just running, he's organizing, consolidating power, preparing for a campaign of terror that will make the government regret it ever challenged him. From hiding, Pablo creates a new organization, Los Extraditables, the Extraditables. Not just his people, but representatives from all cartels threatened by extradition. Their slogan, "We prefer a grave in Colombia to a cell in the United States." The message is clear: they'll accept death before extradition, and they'll kill anyone who tries. The campaign begins with a simple tactic: silver or lead, plata o plomo. Officials, judges, police officers receive a choice: take a bribe and ignore them, or refuse and die. Most take the bribe. Those who refuse die. Supreme Court Justice Hernando Baquero Borda refuses, assassinated outside his home. Chief Prosecutor Carlos Mauro Hoyos refuses, kidnapped, tortured, executed. Police Colonel Jaime Ramirez leads successful raids, car-bombed, along with his wife and 2 young children. The violence is systematic, calculated. Pablo isn't just defending himself, he's sending a message to every official in Colombia. Opposing him has a price, a very high price. But the state doesn't fold. President Betancourt, despite the terror, continues the crackdown. American DEA agents pour into Colombia. The military destroys lab after lab. Assets worth hundreds of millions are seized. Pablo loses territory, loses revenue, loses men. But he still has one advantage. He's willing to go further than the government, to be more brutal, more relentless, to destroy everything if necessary. In November 1985, he demonstrates exactly how far he'll go. The Palace of Justice in Bogotá, home of the Colombian Supreme Court. November 6, 1985, 11:30 a.m. 35 heavily armed guerrillas from the M19 movement storm the building. They take 300 hostages, including 11 Supreme Court justices. Their official demand: put President Betancourt on trial for betraying peace negotiations. Their real mission, financed by Pablo: destroy files on drug traffickers awaiting extradition hearings. The army responds with overwhelming force: tanks, helicopter gunships. The battle rages for 28 hours. The palace burns. Gunfire echoes through downtown Bogotá. Television cameras broadcast it live. When it ends, 100 people are dead, including half the Supreme Court justices. The files Pablo wanted destroyed. Not by theft, but by fire and chaos. Pablo denies involvement. M19 denies being paid by cartels. The government can't prove the connection, but everyone knows the truth. This is the moment Colombia realizes what it's facing. Not just a criminal, but a man willing to attack the highest institutions of the state. A man with resources to hire guerrillas to wage war. A man without limits. The war escalates. 1986 through 1988. Colombia descends into chaos. Bombings become routine. Car bombs in Bogota, Medellín, Cali. Police stations, government buildings, shopping centers, newspaper offices. Anyone opposing the cartels becomes a target. Pablo expands his reach beyond Colombia, establishes distribution networks in every major American city: New York, Miami, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston. The cocaine flows like water. Despite government crackdowns, despite DEA operations, supply never stops. When one route closes, two more open. Revenue reaches unprecedented levels. At the cartel's peak, Pablo's organization earns $21 billion annually. To put it in perspective, that's more than McDonald's global revenue in the same period. More than many countries' entire economies. But money brings paranoia. Pablo trusts no one. He has his own brother-in-law killed for suspected betrayal, orders the execution of dozens of his own men on vague suspicions, sleeps in different locations every night, travels with an army of bodyguards, communicates through coded messages and intermediaries. His family life deteriorates. His wife Maria Victoria and children, Juan Pablo and Manuela, live in luxury but constant fear. They can't go to school, can't have normal friends, can't leave secure compounds. His daughter Manuela later recalls, "I loved my father, but I was terrified of him. He was two different people." In 1988, Forbes officially lists him as the 7th richest man in the world. Wealth, estimated $25 billion. He's 40 years old. But the cost of that wealth is measured in blood. Conservative estimates, the Medellín Cartel killed more than 4,000 people. Police officers, judges, politicians, journalists, rival traffickers, innocent bystanders caught in crossfire. Pablo's response when asked about the violence: "I'm a businessman. Sometimes business gets violent. That's not my fault. That's reality." The reality is about to get much worse. Luis Carlos Galán, presidential candidate, Liberal Party. Charismatic, honest, popular. His platform: end corruption, crush the cartels, extradite drug lords to the United States. Polls show him winning the 1990 election by a landslide. For Pablo, this is an existential threat. Previous presidents could be bribed or intimidated. Galán can't. He's incorruptible and fearless. If he becomes president, extradition becomes inevitable. August 18, 1989. Galán attends a campaign rally in Suacha, a town near Bogota. 10,000 supporters. Galán walks through the crowd, shaking hands, smiling. Security is present, but not heavy. Galán believes in being accessible. At 9:15 p.m., he climbs onto a truck bed to give his speech. 3 gunmen open fire from different positions. 13 shots hit him. He falls. Dies on the way to the hospital. The assassins are caught immediately. Under interrogation, they confirm, ordered and paid by Pablo Escobar. 10 million pesos per gunman. They show no remorse. Colombia explodes. This isn't just another murder. Galán was the country's hope. The man who could have saved Colombia from narco-terrorism. His death feels like the death of that hope. President Virgilio Barco declares a state of emergency, announces total war on the cartels. Thousands of troops deployed. Extraditions accelerate. The first cartel leaders are sent to the U.S. within weeks. Pablo goes deeper into hiding, but he doesn't stop fighting. Instead, he escalates. If the government wants war, he'll give them war on a scale they can't imagine. The bombing campaign begins. Not targeted assassinations anymore, but mass terror. The goal: make the Colombian people so afraid, so desperate, that they force their government to negotiate. November 27, 1989. Avianca Flight 203, Bogotá to Cali. 110 passengers, 5 crew. 7 minutes after takeoff, a bomb explodes in the passenger cabin. The plane disintegrates in mid-air. Everyone dies. Pablo's target: presidential candidate César Gaviria, running to replace the murdered Galán. Intelligence suggested Gaviria would be on the flight. He wasn't. He changed plans at the last minute. 107 innocent people died to kill one man who wasn't even there. December 6, 1989. DAS building in Bogotá. The DAS, Departamento Administrativo de Seguridad, is Colombia's main intelligence agency. 6 a.m. A truck loaded with 500 kilograms of dynamite parks outside the building's entrance. The driver walks away. 6:30 a.m. The bomb detonates. The explosion is so powerful it's heard across the city. The DAS building collapses. 70 people killed, more than 1,000 injured. Nearby buildings destroyed, windows shattered for blocks. This isn't assassination. This is terrorism. The Colombian public turns against Pablo. Even in Medellín, even among the poor who once loved him, support erodes. When innocent people die by the hundreds, philanthropy doesn't matter anymore. The government intensifies the hunt. A special unit, the Search Block, is created specifically to find and kill Pablo Escobar. Trained by American Delta Force and British SAS, equipped with cutting-edge surveillance technology, led by Colonel Hugo Martinez, a man who makes finding Pablo his personal mission. Pablo responds by targeting police officers and their families. In 1990 alone, more than 500 police officers are killed in Medellín, not in operations, but in cold blood, off-duty, at home, with their families. The message: join the Search Block and you're dead. So are your wife and children. It works. Recruitment to the Search Block drops. Officers request transfers. Some quit the force entirely. Terror is effective. But Pablo is losing. Slowly, but unmistakably. The government isn't backing down. The Americans are increasing support. Other cartels, tired of the heat Pablo brings, stop cooperating. Some actively help authorities. In June 1991, Pablo makes a calculation. He can't win by force. He needs to negotiate. But negotiating from weakness means accepting terms he once would have rejected. The deal: Pablo will surrender. In exchange, the government guarantees no extradition. He'll be imprisoned in Colombia, in a prison of his own design, with minimal security. Serve a symbolic sentence, maybe 5 years. Then, freedom. It sounds absurd, and it is. But the Colombian government is desperate. The violence has to stop. The economy is collapsing. Tourism is dead. Foreign investment fled. If giving Pablo a comfortable prison prevents more bombings, it's worth it. June 19, 1991. Pablo Escobar surrenders. Not to regular police. He doesn't trust them. He negotiates the details with the priest Hernando Giraldo, a local mediator. The surrender happens in the priest's church. Television cameras present. Pablo wants the world to see this isn't an arrest. It's a negotiated agreement. He's taken to La Catedral, the cathedral, a prison built specifically for him on a mountain overlooking Medellín. But calling it a prison is generous. It's a luxury estate with a fence, king-size beds, private bathrooms with jacuzzis, full kitchen, bar, private gym, soccer field, nightclub, waterfall in the garden, telephone lines, fax machines, satellite TV. He's allowed to bring his own staff, cooks, cleaners, security guards who are actually his bodyguards. Officially, he's imprisoned. In reality, he runs his organization from inside. Associates visit freely. Parties happen weekly. He continues trafficking cocaine, ordering murders, managing finances. The only difference from before? He doesn't have to hide. For 1 year, this arrangement holds. The government pretends Pablo is punished. Pablo pretends to be imprisoned. The violence stops and Colombia breathes. But in July 1992, everything collapses. Two of Pablo's associates, the Moncada and Galeano brothers, are suspected of stealing money from the organization. Pablo invites them to La Catedral to discuss the situation. They come. They don't leave. Pablo tortures them personally, over hours, wants to know where the money is. They confess to taking $3 million. He kills them. Their bodies are dismembered and buried on the prison grounds. Word leaks. The media reports that Pablo is torturing and killing people inside his prison. Public outrage explodes. The government has no choice but to act. Pablo will be transferred to a real prison, a military prison with actual security. July 22, 1992. The military arrives at La Catedral to transfer Pablo, but he's been tipped off. When soldiers enter, Pablo and his top associates simply walk out through an unguarded section of fence. The easiest prison break in history. Because it wasn't a prison. It was a hotel with a guest who decided to leave. Pablo goes back into hiding, but this time it's different. He's made too many enemies. The Cali cartel, tired of competition, funds a vigilante group called Los Pepes, people persecuted by Pablo Escobar. They hunt not just Pablo, but his entire support network. Los Pepes are brutal. They kill Pablo's lawyers, accountants, business partners, family members, burn his properties, seize his assets. The goal: destroy his infrastructure so thoroughly that he has nowhere to run, no resources to fight. The search block intensifies operations. American CIA and Delta Force operatives provide intelligence. Electronic surveillance tracks every phone call. Informants are everywhere. Pablo's empire crumbles. His associates are arrested or killed. His money is seized. His safe houses are raided. He moves constantly, paranoid, desperate. For 16 months he runs, from mansion to apartment to slum. His appearance changes, loses weight, grows a beard, dyes his hair, wears cheap clothes. The man who once traveled with hundreds of bodyguards now hides with one or two trusted men. His family flees to Germany, then Mozambique. They're denied asylum everywhere. Nobody wants Pablo Escobar's family. His wife and children end up back in Colombia, under police protection, isolated. Pablo calls them regularly, too regularly. Each call is a risk, but he can't help it. They're all he has left. December 2, 1993. He calls his son from that house on Los Olivos Street. Talks for 3 minutes, 17 seconds. The call is traced. Within an hour, the search block surrounds the house. Pablo and Limon try to escape across the rooftops. Gunfire erupts. Pablo is hit 3 times: neck, torso, ear. He falls on the red tile roof. Colonel Martinez arrives minutes later, looks down at the body. After 2 years of hunting, it's over. Pablo Escobar is dead at 44 years old. The aftermath is complicated. Medellín celebrates. People dance in the streets. The terror is over. But some poor neighborhoods mourn. For them, Pablo was a hero, despite everything. The Medellín Cartel collapses immediately. Without Pablo's leadership and ruthlessness, it fragments. Former associates are arrested or killed. The Cali cartel takes over most operations, but they too fall within years. Pablo's family suffers. His wife, Maria Victoria, and children flee Colombia, live in Argentina under assumed names. His son, Juan Pablo, changes his name to Sebastian Marroquin, becomes an architect and author, spends his life apologizing for his father's crimes. His daughter, Manuela, struggles with severe depression and trauma. Multiple suicide attempts. She lives in hiding, rarely speaks publicly. His mother, Hermilda, dies, still believing her son was a good man persecuted by unjust enemies. She's buried next to Pablo in a cemetery in Medellín. Fresh flowers appear on his grave daily, left by people who remember the houses he built, the soccer fields, the money he distributed. The Colombian government seizes what assets they can find, billions in cash, properties, businesses. But most of Pablo's wealth, hidden in offshore accounts, buried in remote locations, invested through layers of shell companies, is never recovered. Estimates suggest $15 billion to $20 billion remains hidden somewhere. The cultural legacy is equally complex. Pablo Escobar becomes a global icon, not a villainy of anti-establishment rebellion. Narcos TV series, countless documentaries, books, movies. His face on t-shirts, posters, murals. Young people who never experienced his terror romanticize him as a Robin Hood figure. In Medellín, his old neighborhood is now a tourist attraction. People take selfies at his grave, visit the ruins of his properties, buy Pablo Escobar merchandise. The city government tries to rebrand, to move past the narco era, but tourists want narco tours. His nephew, after years of hiding, starts giving tours of Pablo's properties, claims to tell the real story, makes money off the infamy. Critics call it disgusting. Supporters say it's honest history. The debate about Pablo Escobar never ends. Was he a criminal who destroyed Colombia, or a product of Colombia's inequality and corruption? Was his violence exceptional, or just more visible than state violence and paramilitary violence that killed even more people? His methods influenced a generation of criminals. The cartel model, the systematic corruption, the use of terror as business strategy. Modern drug organizations from Mexico to Albania to Southeast Asia study his tactics. Law enforcement studied him too. The hunt for Pablo Escobar transformed how governments fight organized crime. Electronic surveillance, international cooperation, targeting financial networks, turning criminals against each other. The playbook written for Pablo is now standard. In the end, Pablo Escobar's story is a tragedy. Not in the sense of an innocent victim, he chose his path deliberately, but in the classical sense, a man with genuine intelligence and ability who could have succeeded legally, but whose flaws, ruthlessness, paranoia, inability to compromise, destroyed him and everyone around him. He built an empire that touched 5 continents, generated wealth beyond imagination, challenged a government and nearly won. But he ended alone, running, desperate, killed on a rooftop like a common criminal. His daughter Manuela once said, "My father's money destroyed everything. It destroyed our family, destroyed thousands of families, destroyed Colombia. If we could go back, give all the money back, bring all the dead back to life, we would. But we can't. We just have to live with what he did." That's Pablo Escobar's real legacy. Not the money, not the power, not the legend. The destruction, the thousands dead, the families ruined, the country traumatized. The poison that still flows through American streets, still kills thousands annually, still funds criminals who learn from his example. He wanted to be remembered. He is, but not as he hoped, not as a hero or benefactor, as a cautionary tale, a demonstration of what happens when intelligence, ambition, and absolute ruthlessness combine without conscience. He proved you can control 80% of a global market. You can earn billions. You can corrupt governments and build armies. You can make an entire country afraid. But you can't escape consequences forever. Power without limits still has limits. And when you go to war with a state, when you kill thousands, when you become the most wanted criminal in the world, the end is inevitable. Pablo Escobar controlled everything except his own fate. And in the end, that's the only thing that mattered.